going on? We're here with She Got Game. Today I have the privilege of speaking to the towering forward hailing from Australia. The five-star recruit has taken major strides in basketball, committing to Stanford University. The Stanford commit and relentless scorer possesses the height and skills to reestablish dominance in a post for the Cardinals. I'm here with the one and only Lara Somfai. How are you? I appreciate you for really taking the time out to chat with us today. It's been an honor and it's an absolute privilege. We've been in chat for a long time. I'm just really happy we can finally make it happen for you.
Thank you so much. I'm honored to be here. Thank you for having me.
Of course, of course. Yeah, definitely a long time coming, long time coming. And just to kick it off, I want to ask you because here at She Got Game, we do a She Got Game moment, right? We have a segment called the She Got Game moment, and what that pretty much means, for any of our features, is a moment where either they felt they've arrived or they've taken that next step in their journey or career. And each person has their own unique moment, and during their journey, it could be the littlest things, it could be the strangest things, it could be a possession on the court, it could be whatever it is. So, what is Lara Somfai's She Got Game on?
That's a really great question. This is a really tough question though. I feel like I haven't necessarily had like a main moment that comes to mind. I think I'm still coming to my she got game moment. I think it'll still come to me. And maybe when I'm in college or pro or something, hopefully. But I think maybe probably when I first moved out of home, when I first left my family in Australia and I moved to the other side of Australia to go to the Australian Institute of Sport. It's like kind of like a boarding academy in which I live in now, but obviously in Australia. And that was kind of like my first moment when I first like had to do my laundry and I had to, like cook for myself. And I was like, oh my goodness, like I actually live by myself. Like I have to like I don't rely on anyone anymore. It's just me. So that was my first moment where I was like, this is crazy. So yeah.
Absolutely. I honestly I think that's extremely unique because normally what takes place, a lot of people usually have some type of basketball moment when they're children or whether they're older, whatever the case is. But, unlike many, you have a very unique, different like, if someone leaves home, they're jumping through maybe a few states, maybe a few, hours away from home. You in your situation is extremely different. So that kind of leads me into my next point. For people at home, where did it all begin for Lara Sofet?
Yeah, well, I'm 17. I'm actually born in Hungary. I'm from Hungary. My whole family lives in Hungary. When I was really, really little, when I was like two or three, my parents and I, we moved out to Australia. So I grew up in Australia, but I grew up speaking Hungarian at home. Hungarian's my first language. I learned English at school. My whole family lives in Hungary, so I grew up visiting them every year. So I don't know. Obviously my home's Australia, but my whole family is in Hungary, so I like to call both of them home.
Absolutely, absolutely. There's nothing wrong with that. Nothing wrong with it, especially when you got family now in America too. I'm assuming your teammates, coaches, and very special relationships you've made. So that's really cool. And not too many people can say that. I want to dive into, getting into basketball. What inspired you to pick up a basketball? A lot of people usually don't start at basketball. They play other sports and they kind of progress their way. What inspired you to pick up a basketball? And, has that inspiration changed since then? Has that inspiration changed?
Definitely not. My parents were the ones that inspired me to, well, not necessarily pick up a basketball, but play sports. I think growing up, I never really had a choice with either to go and play sports. I used to do gymnastics. I used to do swimming. My parents always encouraged me to be active because they didn't want me on my phone. They didn't want me doing technology. They didn't want me watching TV. So I either could go outside and we had like a hoop in the backyard. So they were like, oh, you can go outside and dribble or run or something. You can do something active, or you can stay inside and do schoolwork and study. And so I like would always go outside and shoot around. And I think that's when I first like started shooting a basketball. And I was like, oh my goodness, like it's going in. I guess I'm okay at it. So yeah, I think my parents are my biggest like supporter and you know, when I first started, like I just did it because I had to play a sport. And I started really late. Well, when I started, all the other girls had been playing for like 4 or 5 years. And I was like, oh my goodness. But I think I was like 11 when I started, 10 or 11. But yeah, and I'm not sure. My parents just always supported me. And I loved it. Like when I first started, I set out, goals for myself that I have like written in my childhood bedroom, and I manifested like the ways I'm going to work towards each of those goals, and I've been doing that my whole life. And so, yeah, it's always been natural for me.
Speaking of that, natural, a lot of game, at least from what I've seen from basketball, and I think you could probably attest to it. Coming to America, there's a different style. We have different styles in America, whether you play in the West Coast style of basketball, the East Coast, there's a different grit, there's a different kind of swagger to it. However, you know, when you're talking global basketball, sometimes, I know the Europeans, for instance, they're very, very strict on fundamentals and they kind of develop very differently. With that being said, what do you think came the most natural to you and what do you think you needed per se the most development in growing up?
Oh, I actually think basketball, like in general, I'm not the most athletic person at all. I know some of my teammates that are incredibly athletic and are just born naturally like Olympians, like, and they don't even need to work a day in their life, and their body's just amazing, and they just can jump high and run fast. But that's definitely not me. And like, my parents never ever were basketball players or did any sport for that matter. So, like, I didn't really, I don't feel like I have any like natural God-given ability or anything like that. But when I first started, I was tall and I loved it. Like I started playing and I found something I genuinely loved. And then the more I did it, the more I loved it. And I loved it because I could express my creativity. I could be myself through it. I really like, I love to do stuff. We'll talk about this after, but I love to do stuff like off the court, which I can express my creativity as well. But like basketball is a way for me to do something I love that, you know, can like I can express my creativity through it, and that's why I love it. So yeah, it was super cool. I was just grateful to find something I like to do. And once I did that, like it just kind of started going somewhere. And I really didn't know. I still at the moment like I've always just played basketball because I love it. So that's never gonna change. So that's what I do.
Absolutely. No, I love it. I love it. There's nothing better than and nothing harder, I should say, than finding your passion and kind of finding fulfillment in it. A lot of people, especially at a young age, kind of go through the process of finding that. And the fact that, you can hear it in your voice, how passionate you are and how fulfilling it is for you is really cool and inspiring, I think. But you kind of did mention it. It brings out a form of creativity that you may not be able to possess or you may not be able to display in certain other ways, right? What are some other interests and hobbies outside of basketball that many may not know you personally enjoy?
Oh my goodness. That's actually good. I know for a fact people, I love to read. I'm a huge, huge book nerd. I love to read. People don't usually guess that. I really, really love to read. I love to do art. I'm a big painter. I actually don't have my paint supplies at IMG. I've been missing it a lot, but back home, I'm always painting. I love to paint. So I'm either painting or reading, usually.
You're
That's what I like
reading.
to do. Yeah.
I love it. I love it. What type of painting do you like to do? Are you a pastel girl? Are you, what
I
type
like
of
acrylic paints. I always use acrylic paints. I've used oil before. I like oil as well. I don't like watercolor that much, so anything but watercolor.
Gotcha. No, that's really cool, man. Everyone's got their thing. Everyone's got some people
Yeah.
go on drives, some people go on runs. So that's really cool. That's really cool. I want to ask you a little bit. I mean, you said when you were younger, right? You obviously realized, you were towering over people. You're gonna be tall. It was just natural, right? What at what age did you begin realizing that you have a unique skill and athletic ability that can kind of separate yourself from everyone else?
Yeah, I'm not sure. I think I still feel like I said before, like there's so many other girls that I think are more like physically so athletic and or have parents that, are famous basketball players and they've grown up like playing basketball and that's what they have to do. Do you know what I mean? And so I never had that. I went to normal public school. I did swimming and gymnastics. Like I played basketball for the fun of it. And then, I there were times when my mom was like, "Look, Lara, like you can do this. Like you're really good at this." And I didn't believe her. I was like, "Oh my goodness, like no." Sometimes the ball goes in, but that's it. But no, definitely I think oh my goodness, I don't think it actually hit me until like I think when I first made my first national team. That's when I was like, "Oh my goodness, like that's one of my goals that I set out for myself when I was 10 and I achieved it and I did it. And from then on I every year I make vision boards for myself. I draw up my vision board, I write it, I write everything I want to achieve that year and I set myself steps towards how I'm going to achieve everything. And these are goals like that I thought were completely out of reach when I was younger. And now, like, for example, one of them I set up for myself was make McDonald's All American. And I never ever thought I would ever be in the running for McDonald's All American, let alone make the team. So yeah. But that was, me manifesting it and working for it every day. So yeah, I think that.
Speaking, I mean, look, you're saying so much. It's so cool because like you said, like I mean, from that manifestation of it, from realizing it's almost so humble that like it doesn't. It almost sounds like you don't know how talented you are, or how gifted you are, and it is really. It's really sometimes nice to see people kind of take themselves out their body and reflect and kind of just sit there and really realize the body of work and stuff they're possessing, and it's really cool.
Oh, thank
Um,
you. Thank you. I love to manifest. I love to visualize. I believe in all that type of stuff. I think it works real wonders, to be honest.
clearly you're a
Yeah.
living testament. And you did just mention McDonald's All-American. You did just mention making a national team. Congrats, by the way. You're one of the best in your country.
Thank you.
That's really an amazing feat. My question to you is, having played ball at such a high level in the States as well as overseas, what would you say is the biggest differences in the style of play?
Oh, I grew up always wanting to play American basketball. Like you guys here, I think personally here the girls are much more creative. There's a lot more creativity. That element is a lot stronger here. Just in general, they're so much more athletic in America. And they're just much more talented. I think like their natural abilities are more like you guys have such a diverse range of people to choose from. It's such a big country, so many people that the basketball culture here is huge. And you grow up like watching obviously like MJ, LeBron, like all these guys and even us girls, like Paige Beckers and Stewie and these type of people. And I think just the creativity here is amazing. And in Australia and overseas in Europe, just from, with even with my national team and like growing up, I think it's the basketball style of basketball overseas is a lot more structured. Um, a lot more structured, a lot more fundamental, I feel. And also I think the girls here it's more of an individual style of basketball. Like it's more ISO, more one-on-one, more pick and roll. And overseas it's much more like plays and sets and actions and stuff like that, if that makes sense.
Gotcha. Yeah, no, that makes sense. I have a twofer for you. So my first
Hmm.
question to you is, wow, wow, I think doing the fundamental, at least from what I've seen, because I covered the WNBA as well, and obviously we get a ton of those players that come in, and it almost seems you probably get a more prototypical, a prototype overall well-rounded basketball player because you're right. They kind of do everything fine. They play defense the right way. They pass the ball the right way. They shoot the right way. Everything. However, there's an aspect of the individuality where like an
Yeah.
American player will come in and you get an Enrique, and
Hmm.
you get all these other players versus, another player, who's really, really good. However, you could just see the aspects of their game. At some point, do you believe that maybe the fundamental route takes away from the creativity and vice versa? Maybe the creativity, sometimes being too creative can take away from the actual fundamental aspect.
I completely agree. I completely agree. Like growing up. At least I know in Australia it's and maybe in Europe as well, but it's a little bit of habit of kind of pigeonholing people. Like if you're tall, you have to play in the post, or if you're a guard, you have to, play the guard. And growing up, like I think obviously kids grow in spurts. So like at first I was pretty tall and then they would put me in the post and then all the other girls started growing and I played as a guard for 2 or 3 years. I played as a point guard. So then, my skills like that developed and then I started growing again. And then I had those point guard skills, but I was tall. So I think for me that really worked out well, but I don't really like the idea of pigeonholing and position basketball. I'm not sure. Like I think if you have players that are versatile and can play 1 through 5, I would rather have a team of all of those, if that makes sense. For sure.
Absolutely, yeah. No, and my other question to, just the two for that, in the same breath of how we kind of just said the differences or, some of the positive and negative between American and overseas basketball, what would you say are some of the biggest misconceptions that you felt Americans may have with overseers?
Oh, that's a really great question. Oh my goodness. I think I think probably that like overseas there might that look, America's basketball I think is a lot faster. The girls overall, like it's here in America, it's like it's life or death basketball. Like you are playing for your life. Like your people's life is on the line, right? And obviously overseas that mentality isn't the same. But I think sometimes it gets a little misconceptive with like, oh, like they're weak. Like they're weak. It's for nothing. I definitely disagree with that one. That's probably the only one I disagree with. I think overseas, like in general, we're pretty tough. Like we're tough. It's hard. The basketball's pretty tough. We have a lot of great competition. But yeah, that's the one I've heard. That's probably the only one I've heard that I'm like, oh, like definitely not weak. But yeah.
I'm gonna say, man, even FIBA, they say the refs and stuff, you guys, they call the games very differently in Europe.
Yeah.
And and the bigs, they can sit in the paint. There's no 5 second violation, things of that nature. So it
Yeah.
game differently. So that is
Yeah, and we
really
have to
cool.
play shot clock. We have shot clock. We have backcourt rules. Here in America, you guys barely have that. So yeah.
True. It's true. No, it changes the game dramatically. And I want to transition slightly a little bit. Currently you're at IMG Academy, right? One of the most, I mean, prestigious and just also just one of the most I don't if I had to think of schools in the country that produce as much talent as IMG, the only other probably product that's bringing it is probably Mount Verde. It's not too many. It's a powerhouse. Let's just call it what it is. So currently at IMG Academy, where they prepare you to kind of become a student athlete at the next level. Recently, you've just committed to Stanford University. Congrats on that, by the way. You know,
Thank you.
why Stanford University? I want to ask personally, why Stanford University, and how do you believe they will put you in the best position to succeed athletically as well as academically?
Yeah, I mean, like growing up, I always knew I wanted to play college. I think for me, school's super, super important. And my parents always raised me to prioritize school and sport, obviously, but school mainly. And so when I have the opportunity of either like going pro or playing in college, I was like, oh my goodness, I want the degree. I want to have the experience. I want to play in America. That's the best basketball in the world. So yeah, and having the like when I first got my first few calls from college, I was like, oh my goodness, like this is so surreal. I genuinely couldn't believe it. I was like, are you sure you're on the phone with the right person? Like me and my mom were like, guys, like this coach just called us. Like there's no way this person is calling us. Like they definitely messed it up. So yeah, and in the end, I ended up deciding between UConn, Stanford, and Duke, which all three of them are absolutely incredible programs. And I still like my parents couldn't believe it. They're like, "Oh my gosh, Lara, like this has to be a joke." So I was super super. I couldn't believe it either. But it was a really really hard choice, and I think I went on visits to all three places. I even though it was really really hard, I had to. I made sure that I had to visit all three places before I made any type of decision. That was one of the like goals. Like, I set that up for myself. I was like, you're not deciding anything before you visit all three places. So I went to visit all three. I visited Stanford last, and when I was at Stanford, I was stuck there for a few days because of the hurricanes in Florida,
No.
and I went to the library actually, and I saw all the books, and it was this stunning, like European style library that reminded me of back home in Hungary, where like I would go with my grandma to borrow books like every weekend. And so I went there and I studied there for a little bit, and oh my goodness, I fell in love. I absolutely loved it. And that was the moment where I was like, oh my goodness, like I want to come to school here. When I saw the library, and I just felt like it felt like home, and it felt like where I wanted to be. And I hadn't felt that feeling before that. And I wrote up my pros and cons list. I'm a huge pros and cons person. And for all the schools I wrote it up, and Stanford, I couldn't think about anything that would stop me from going there. Genuinely. Like it has the academics. School's super, super important to me. So it's a challenge, but I love school. So the academics are super important. And the basketball is incredible. So it's the best of both worlds, really.
That's unbelievable, man. I mean, you heard it here first, man. The books got her. The books got
No,
her.
they actually did. I was like, oh my goodness,
Books
spending
got
all my time here.
her. That's unreal, man. I'm be honest with you. Here live, I was not expecting the one of the biggest factors. That's so cool, man. And it's different. It's different. It shows kind of where your mindset is and kind of just how you think outside of, per se just strictly basketball, which is really nice.
Yeah, I was thinking like no matter where I go, the basketball's gonna be incredible. Like I'm gonna get the basketball from wherever I go. You know what I mean?
Bro, you literally your top three, you can't go wrong, man. You could have been a Blue Devil. You can't go wrong with the Huskies out there with Gino and Stanford. Which actually leads me to my next question a bit. You you've been a five-star recruit. You've been highly recruited. You've been highly obsessed over by plenty of teams since young, right? Even now, IMG. You were recruited by IMG to for them to bring you out. With that being said, how have you managed these expectations? Because obviously, with that obsession and with, people reaching out to you as often as they do, there's an expectation set there, and a lot going into Stanford. You got Kiki. You got big shoes as far as Kiki. A lot of people, let's be clear, Stanford's looking for that next person to be the next Cameron Brink or the next whatever, Kiki, or they have a long list of bigs and stuff. It's kind of just been their origin. That being said, how have you been able to manage expectations on a collegiate level, but just also just throughout your journey? It's already hard enough to play at a high level, but then to go out there, manage expectations, and kind of still just keep a cool, calm head.
Yeah, I think I use gratitude a lot. Like I gratitude journal every night. That helps me a lot. Every night I write down a few things I'm grateful for. And whether that just be like me being healthy or my family being safe or me being safe or me going to school and getting an education. And those things, like when I think about those and then in the hindsight, I think about these things that people might have said about me or asked, like none of it matters because I talk like for myself and my parents, I talk about the things that do matter to me in my life. And as long as I'm healthy and I'm getting an education and I'm doing what I love, nothing else for me matters. So I talk to my parents every day. I talk to my grandma every single day. I talk to my cousins. Like I'm really, really close with my family. We are super, super close family. So I talk to them every day. And to be honest, I'm so busy that I don't even have time to think about expectations or anything. And if I do, I write in my journal, I gratitude journal, and that makes me feel a lot better whether I'm stressed about anything. So yeah.
That's really cool. So in order to kind of help keep you level-headed, you
Mhm.
write things down you're simply grateful for, and you kind of keep the main thing, essentially. It helps level you.
Yeah, yeah. And I think about it like even though basketball is my life, like basketball is my whole life. I try to think about things that, also are parts of my life, like school or like my family or my friends or, going to the beach or reading a book. Like I try to focus on that type of stuff and not basketball in some ways.
Absolutely. Sometimes
Yeah.
you need to escape sometimes, 100%.
Yeah.
I get it. I get it. You mentioned, well, we said a lot of names, outside obviously speaking about you, we said a lot of names from Kiki to Cameron to Stewie to, several other European players and things of that nature. Is there anybody in the WNBA as well as the NBA or FIBA, anyone that, overseas or anything like that that you try to per se model your game after, or is there a person that you really enjoy that you like to take pieces from and implement in your game?
Oh my goodness, I love watching everyone. I love to watch everyone. I love watching basketball. Me and my mom, we're obsessed with basketball. We always are watching basketball. We're always on the phone watching the games for NCAA. I love to watch college basketball. So even when I was in Australia, I would always watch all the college games. But I like growing up, I didn't really model my game after a specific person. I know a lot of my teammates, they will have like a one person that pops into mind, but I think like, oh my goodness, I have so many players I love. Like I love Luka Doncic. He is one of my favorite players. I love Nafisa Collier. I love Paige Beckers, Hailey Van Lith. Like them in high school when I was younger, I used to watch Paige Beckers and Hailey Van Lith highlights before every single game because I just get into that like good, tough, gritty mood. Um, so yeah, I'm not sure. I pick pieces from people, but I really like to watch like the way people do interviews and the way people act off the court and their social media and the foundations they support and stuff like that and what type of people they are. I think that's what I try to model more than the basketball side of it, if that makes sense.
Yeah, it does. So you're looking
Yeah.
at character. You're looking
Yeah.
you're looking for character, good people. That's actually really cool.
Yeah, character for sure.
And there's also a key aspect I think that speaks to your dedication there and just like love for the game. And a lot of people may not catch it. That's why I'm gonna just make it clear. She said she watches NCAA or she's been watching NCAA and WNBA games, and all of the sort while in Australia. Let's be clear. I believe there's almost a 10-hour gap. I believe so, which means for people at home, this means she could be up in Australia at 3, 4 in the morning or 2 in the morning watching, whatever time game here just because she loves the game that much. And I think that really speaks to who you are and just, how you've gotten this far as a player. Because let's be clear, there are people who are really good at basketball. They're just not doing it. They're just
Yeah, it
they're
is tough. It is tough, but I'll do anything for a good game for sure. Me and my mom always stay up.
really cool, man. You guys, it sounds like you guys use it kind of to bond as well, outside of just the game itself. Whether you play it or not, it sounds like it's something you guys, thoroughly enjoy, which is great.
Yeah, yeah.
Personally, in what ways do you believe the game actually changed your life in general?
Oh my goodness, that is a really coming out of those are great questions. Oh goodness. Well, I think I genuinely know that I wouldn't be who I am like without basketball. I think, but not only because of like playing basketball, obviously, but because of all the difficult things I've had to go through and all those really hard times that from being on the complete other side of the world to my whole family and friends and everyone I know to, that's probably the hardest thing I've had to go through, just, being homesick. Um, but yeah, well, talking to my parents, like I only get 3 hours a day. The time difference, talk to my parents, so that's really hard. But all these things that basketball's put me in the position, like I wouldn't be in America right now if I wouldn't have played basketball. And I know for a fact I wouldn't be who I am if I didn't play basketball. I know all these hard things while they are really difficult, and I do want to go home sometimes, but they, they made me who I am. And without having these difficult things to go through, I don't know who I would be. So I've I think it's grown my character, it's grown me into the person I am. I genuinely don't know what I would be doing if I didn't play basketball. So I think that for sure.
Absolutely, absolutely. I mean, when you dedicate this much time and you dedicate, even your free time, it sounds like, like when you're not training or when you're not per se getting ready for a game, you watch. Like when you spend that much time and that much dedication to the game, it's gonna naturally evolve you, and that's what it sounds like it's done. To speak to that a little bit, I mean, because life, as you know, is, it's ebbs and flows, man. Like, sometimes you're high, sometimes you're low. It just is what it is, At your lowest moments or, when you're struggling at times, are there any sayings or are there any mottos that you like to, implement or say to yourself to kind of help you persevere through tough times?
Yeah, that's a really great question. I really like I'm not a big quote person, but I like this one quote. It's like it's like what you will never miss out on what's meant for you. I really like that one because I'm not sure. I just think like all the things I stress about, and I'm like, oh my gosh, like what if this happens? What if this doesn't happen? Like I always just think about that. I'm like, oh, like if whatever's meant for me will come to me. Like if it doesn't, then it wasn't meant for me, and it's better that way. So I like to think about that. And my mum always tells me to control what I can control. Coach always says that as well. I always get worked up. I'm like, oh, I want to control everything, but no. And I think, like I said before, I make my vision board. I have it up every morning. I'm brushing my teeth, or last year I had it up right next to my bed. So when I wake up, I see my vision board, and those things that I set up for myself. And every morning when I'm doing my hair and brushing my teeth, I see all the goals I have to achieve, and it's super refreshing for me. Like it's motivation for sure. I think those things that quote as well and just seeing all my goals that I've set out for myself and the steps that I work towards them. That motivates me every day.
That's so cool. That's so cool, man. And it kind of ties into this, if you could simply have it your way, right? Because obviously, I think just from this interview alone and just hearing you speak, you can tell the type of person or the character of the person you ideally want to be when you grow up, right? You could tell that you stand on certain grounds and morals. Um, but more so, if you could have it your way, what would your legacy look like as a basketball player? What type of legacy do you want to leave as a woman basketball player, in general?
Yeah, I have always wanted to inspire people. I think that is what I've always wanted to do. Like when people have asked me what goals I want to achieve or like what levels I want to get to, I've always just said like I want to inspire people like some girls did for me when I was younger. And I think like growing up, my parents never played basketball. They never played any sports. We were I went to a public school in the area. I grew up without any of my family. My whole family lives in Hungary. Like I, we didn't, I didn't have any advantage whatsoever. And so I think if it says anything, like if I can be in this position that I am now, like living on the other side of the world, going to Stanford, I never thought I would ever be able to go to Stanford. Then that proves to other people that they can do it as well. And that is super valuable for me. Knowing that every day when it's a tough day, I'm like, I'm just super tired and I'm really it's a hard day. I think about like me when I was younger and telling my younger self, like, Lara, you did it. Like you're here, you did this. It not only motivates me to keep going, but it like proves to me how strong I am and genuinely like those hard times they make me stronger. I want people to know my legacy. I want them to know she's tough. Like she's tough. She can get through anything. Like she she's tough. Yeah.
Absolutely. Absolutely. She's resilient. She's resilient.
Yeah.
She's tough. She's a high character human, things of that nature, right?
Yeah, for sure.
Absolutely. Before I end up closing with this last question, I just want to stay here. This has been a phenomenal conversation, and I think this has been very insightful for not only just me, but also the thousands of people who will view and see, overseas, because we also have an audience over there, as well as domestically here in the States. So I do think, and I just want to thank you. I do think, and I want to thank you just for your insight and just overall, great conversation. But in conclusion, is there any advice you like to offer any younger girls or boys that may resonate with your journey and possibly just look up to you?
Yeah, for sure. Oh my goodness. The best piece of advice I think I've ever gotten was to put myself in positions that are difficult and to go outside of my comfort zone. And when you're outside your comfort zone and you're doing things that are difficult, that's where you find out who you truly are. And I think I would tell younger girls to be brave and to believe in themselves that they could do it. Because when I was younger, I genuinely did not ever know that these goals could really come true. And I think if you work for it and you set it out for yourself and you truly believe you could do it and you put in all the work, um, I think you have to be brave and you have to be able to willing to do these things. And if you do, you'll achieve all your goals. And yeah, I think that's what I would tell them for sure. To put themselves in hard situations and difficulties where you thrive. That's what I think.
Absolutely. That's it's unbelievable advice coming from you, especially your journey. Nothing about your journey has been easy. Even the moments that are supposed to be easy, down to the top three, having to make a tough decision, having to leave your family across the world, make a tough decision. But you continuously to bet on yourself and clearly putting yourself in difficult situations, you've come out thriving. So I do think you are a living testament of your advice. And just for people at home when they view this, I think what she's giving, it isn't just, kind of filler here. It isn't just, it sounds good and you put it on a t-shirt. I think when I see Laura, I see a person who's lived through it and genuinely looking to advance you in your career as well. So